If you liked this video, please give thumbs up and subscribe. Please hit the bell icon so you will be notified when we come out with new videos. In the year 1992, newspapers on Long Island, New York reported a suspected UFO crash on November 24 in Haven Park, located in Suffolk County. You can find reports on this event with an easy Google search. I remember the event as I lived in Suffolk County, New York at the time, and recall all the talk and newspaper reports concerning this event. It seemed to be the main topic of conversation for a short time, but soon lost its interest as the holidays were just starting and the UFO story seemed to lose its headlines to Santa and the malls. I realize now this event was the big news of that entire year. Years passed and the interest in this crash faded. Quickly the coverage of this incident went from a fantastic event with fire engines and military equipment involved in the incident to a complete turnaround of the firehouse chiefs suddenly claiming they were not there and never helped with any event in the park. The police and military also gave statements to the same, with the newspapers and TV news repeating the same denials. Soon the event lost the public's eye and was forgotten. Actually, the event was forgotten by those who did not see it happen or live in the area at the time. Those who witnessed the event and the fire engines, police, and military enter and work in the park for days had a different account of what took place. Most of the people involved who witnessed the entire encounter quickly learned that going against the tide did not work out well, as they were ridiculed and at. I recall one local radio announcer at the time offering aluminum foil hats to those making the claims the crash did happen. Quickly the conversation of the crash died away and life moved on. I wrote an article about this incident involving a man I knew who told the story at a dinner party that he not only recalled the UFO crash, he saw it happen with his own eyes. The man was a love interest of a friend of mine. The man lived in a very rustic cabin located along the border of the South Haven Park area. In the late 90 feet, I was invited to a dinner party this man and my friend hosted. The man lived in a cabin that was an old dilapidated 3-room building that he was holding together with Duck and Hope. It was hard to imagine anyone living there full-time. It was however neat and clean and made for an interesting dinner. 2 large wood-burning stoves heated it with his water supply borrowed by way of hoses from his neighbor's barn. I do not recall if he had or not, as the party was lit by candles. I do know he heated water on his stoves to wash dishes and take a bath every few days. It did have a working bathroom sort of. He lived off the land, which meant he helped himself to the local farmers' crops, taking his vegetables and fruits from their farms at night by way of flashlight and climbing fences. He also hunted in restricted areas, fished often, and always killed the ducks in the area for his seasonal dinner parties. He would brag openly at how little he actually purchased to live or entertain. I found him to be cheap and a thief. It was not that he helped himself to his neighbor's crops or that he was killing animals in restricted state-protected areas. He was a strange man who felt entitled to do things others would not think of doing. Our dinner party consisted of stolen fruit and vegetables along with freshly killed ducks. The old house was blazing with candles. Set upon a long handmade wooden table, he used his grandmother's china and had a fire going in his large wood-burning stove. Strangely, it was an interesting, enjoyable night. At the end of the evening, we were sipping coffee and sharing homemade fruit pies when the subject came up about the UFO crash in the nearby park years before. In '92, the man who lived in the cabin told us that he had seen the crash happen. The man started his account of the crash by telling us he would allow it as he had no intention of ending up in a mess of trouble. He then told us that he often uses to wait until dark and climb the fence down the road from his cabin that surrounds that part of the park. He told us that it was easy picking for him to quickly gather up fallen tree branches and logs to burn in his cabin stoves. He reminded us no one is supposed to go in the park and do that, which is why he did not want anyone to know what he had witnessed. He told us he was carrying wood back to his truck when he heard a huge rushing air sound with a high-pitched whine. At first, he didn't see anything. The sound kept getting louder. He looked towards the noise and saw it coming in out of the night sky down towards the woods. At first, it looked like a big fireball. As it got closer, it changed direction and dipped lower, coming in over the park. It was a huge dark-colored UFO craft coming in on its side. It was partly on fire across the one side of it. It was really moving fast. Within seconds he heard it hit the ground. It sounded like a big splat rather than an explosion. He stood there a minute, kind of shocked and kind of frozen in fear. He said he thought he heard some kind of movement coming from the park from the direction of where this thing hit. He said he became really terrified and dropped the wood and ran to his truck. He told us the first thing he thought of was that no one knew where he was and realized if he did not get out of there he may never be seen again. His truck would not start. He kept trying until it finally turned over. He told us he floored it down the road. He also said he heard yelling or screaming coming from the park. The man was terrified yet afraid to call the police or tell anyone, as he was also afraid he would get into trouble for what he was doing in the park. After he drove home, he locked up his cabin and stayed awake all night with his shotgun at his side. He told us that just in case whatever was hollering in that woods found its way to his cabin, he wanted to be ready. The man told us that he watched from his cabin windows during that night as trucks, jeeps, and fire trucks flooded the area. He thinks he heard a few helicopters fly over too. He said the next day he tried to walk his old hound down the road close to where all this activity was going on, only to be told to go home and stay there until further notice by men in what appeared to be orange hazard suits. He did not know if the phones were knocked out, as he did not have one at the time, but did say his truck would not start easily for days after the incident. Finally, after about a week passed, the people, trucks, and helicopters were gone and the park seemed to stand barren and silent, he finally ventured down the road and peered into the park. He told us the park seemed dusted of even dirt after that happened. It was like they came in and took every twig and log and leaf that was lying around in the woods. It was as if the whole place had been swept and a false fake wooded area was left behind. The man told us the place now frightened him and he had not been back to the park since that night. After writing the article about this man and the night of the UFO crash, I also stopped thinking about that incident in South Haven Park. I knew something incredible happened, however, besides the local newspaper coverage at the time, I really only talked to that man about the event. During this past holiday season, I met the new wife of an old friend of mine at a Christmas party. During the party, the subject of the local firehouses in our area came up. The people at the party were discussing the costs of building a new firehouse in their community. The conversation consisted of those who wanted a new large firehouse and those who thought the old ones were working out well and did not need to be replaced. During this conversation, the new wife of my friend attacked the fire districts in her area. She said that after their actions when the UFO crashed in the park near her home, she wanted nothing to do with them. I listened with care as she told the group at the party that she saw the craft with her own eyes cross the sky heading towards the park. She told us she had just returned from shopping in town and was bringing in dishes and pies from Thanksgiving with the help of her 2 teenage sons when they all heard a loud swishing sound. They looked towards the sound and saw a large oval egg-shaped object on fire quickly cross the sky heading towards South Haven Park. She said that she knew it was not an airplane or anything she had seen before. She called the police, who told her they already had been alerted by other callers. She told us that she turned on the local radio station, who were discussing that they too were receiving calls from people all over the area who also witnessed this thing on fire heading towards the park. She said that she and her sons listened for hours to the sirens of police and fire equipment as they headed towards the direction of South Haven Park. The local people in the area waited patiently to see what the news would report on this strange event. She too recalls the first reports describing the event as that of a UFO or strange unidentified object crashing in the woods in the park. She also remembers how the days followed with a changing slant on the crash until those who were trying to tell the world what they had seen recoiled as they were made to feel foolish and ridiculed for speaking out. This woman told us that she went to her local firehouse station to talk to an officer that happened to be a lifelong friend of hers to find out what was going on. She told me that her longtime friend treated her as if she was a stranger and denied he or his firehouse had anything to do with any event that occurred in South Haven Park. She took her friend to task by telling him she had seen the thing with her own eyes and knew he was lying to her. She was stunned when his reaction was to demand she leave the firehouse and not return. She has not seen her lifelong friend since. I knew this was the truth as I watched a local TV newscaster try to interview the surrounding fire districts shortly after this event took place, and remember how oddly the firemen reacted to the interview and how overly insistent they were that they were never at the park or knew anything about a crash. I realized that I now had 2 people who did not know each other from that area tell me nearly the same thing about this incident. I also knew that many other people in that area witnessed whatever it was fall or crash in South Haven Park. The truth of this event will never be told. I find it incredible how easy it was to simply tell all the people who saw this event with their own eyes that it was nothing, and get away with it. We are so backward with this type of thing that simply laughing at those who see or encounter these incredulous events are quickly silenced by a bit of humiliation. I often wonder what would have happened if the town full of witnesses united and protested in a group with TV cameras blasting in front of the local police station for the truth about what crashed in that park that night. I think about the strange man living out in his lonely cabin, unwilling to share how he watched this craft crash right in front of him. I wonder how many people all over the world have had similar sightings and similar reasons that prevent them from reporting incredible encounters. I have to wonder what would happen if all those people came forward in mass and refused the ridicule and demanded action. I think we would be living in a very different world if we handled things more smartly. I assure you we would be far more advanced on many levels instead of stuck in the dark ages of the unknown as it now stands. I guess we are creatures of our own habits, traditions and needs. We have been trained to behave as we do when things unknown are reported. We willingly reject the event as it is an easy way to make it all go away. Add a UFO crashing over the holiday season when people are caught up in hectic preparation for the holiday Thanksgiving, Christmas traditions, and you have a perfect time for something like a UFO crash to be kicked under the carpet, after revisiting this crash of something on fire and crashing in South Haven Park. I can only wonder how many others clearly watched that craft burn through the sky and crash that November night in '92. For now, be careful out there, you never know what you may see while stealing wood or bringing in packages from your car.